Do you like me?
Just like me.
Like Me TV Fresno on Facebook. Get the latest news, interact with others, watch videos, become a fan of me. Exclusively brought to you by Ventura TV.
Hi, I'm John Malos, and welcome to Connect with Me on this Tuesday morning. Today, we're going to be talking to Dan Doyle. He is the president and the CEO of the Central Valley Community Bank right here in the city of Fresno. We'll talk about the state of the banking industry. We'll talk about the economy. We'll take your phone calls as well, hopefully at area code 559-265-4331. Back in a minute.
Tonight I want to discuss the importance of the television medium to the American people.
Today, of course, is the focus on business here on Connect with Me on Me TV Fresno, live on Comcast 187 and 43.6. And you know, at this point, I'm not sure that the economy is all the way back and the confidence is there yet with the people. Some people are probably still worried about losing their jobs, losing their homes. Where are they going to get their next meal from? There are a lot of people going to food banks to get their food, even people who are working. So the state of the economy kind of up in the air right now. Remember, we've got a presidential election coming up in November. We'll find out what happens there. And furthermore, what's the state of the banking industry? Are they loaning money? Are you able to buy a house? We're going to answer all those questions and much more with our guy today, a very well-respected man here in the Central Valley. He's been here many years. His name is Dan Doyle. Let's go to the videotape and I'll show you where Dan Doyle works. He was named the president and the CEO of the Central Valley Community Bank way back in 1998. As I said, a very well-respected individual. We'll talk to him about the state of the banking industry, not only here in the city of Fresno, but in California, around the nation, the state of the housing industry, the Federal Reserve. In fact, he is one of 50 bankers, listen to this, one of 50 who's part of an advisory panel that's all part of the Federal Reserve. And live in our studio right now is Dan Doyle. He's got 40 years of banking experience. There he is. We'll ask him how his bank stacks up against the big boys, Wells Fargo and B of A. I'm sure he has all the answers for that. And he'll have the answers to your questions. 559-265-4331 right here on Connect with Me. But keep in mind, try to remember to turn the sound down on your television when you call in and be specific to the topic. Dan will be glad to answer your question about housing, about banking, about the state of the economy. Remember, he's part of that Federal Reserve. He knows what he's talking about, so call him, ask your questions. If you're on the bubble, on the verge of losing your house and want to refinance, he'll have the answer to that question as well. So 265-4331 is the number. We're back with Dan Doyle and your phone calls in just a moment.
Ventura TV Appliance Center. We're the save energy, save time, save money place. The Energy Star qualified #1 rated high efficiency Cabrio from Whirlpool Place. You heard right. Right now, save big on select Whirlpool Cabrio laundry pairs and pay no interest when paid in full within 6 months. At the hometown low price, think outside the big box place. Since 1951, Ventura TV Appliance Center. We're working hard to be your place.
Welcome back. Your phone calls, important here on Connect with Me, 265-4331. Want to welcome in Dan Doyle, the president and the CEO of Central Valley Community Bank. Good to see you, Dan.
Thanks, John.
Hey,
Thanks for having me here today. Appreciate that very much.
I appreciate you taking the time. You know, I want to get right to it. I want to put up on the screen just very quickly here, a full screen. We're talking about the number of banks in the United States right now. And in 1980, there were more than 17,000 banks, as you see here. In 2011, we've got less than 8,000. And the number of branches has really, I mean, in 1980, you had, what, 38,000? In 2011, they went up. How do you explain these numbers?
It is very interesting, and I usually, and when I have the opportunity to talk about the industry, I usually start with this very number, which is 1980 is when I like to think that deregulation started in our industry. Obviously, it was also a beginning of a difficult economic time, so deregulation really started, which allowed banks to merge and over time to branch across state lines and many other types of activities. And so what's happened really is two things that drive those numbers. One is some states had what we called unit bank states, where they couldn't have branches. Montana was one, Texas was one. And so as the laws changed and allowed them to fold multiple banks into a branching system, there was a great deal of merger activity that took place. And as well as across the country, when banks were allowed to expand across state lines. For example, I started with U.S. Bank, which is now the fifth largest bank in the country, but we were headquartered in Oregon, and I ended up in California because when the laws changed, they were allowed to branch into California. So I was sent down here to run and start that bank, and we did 8 acquisitions. And so what's happened is there's been a tremendous consolidation in the industry. The number of branches actually has grown because of the merger activity.
So you're saying, let's put that number up on the screen again right there, Arthur. So you're saying that now there are less than half of the banks that we had in 1980. Is that because of the mergers and some banks just got swallowed up by the bigger ones like Wells Fargo, B of A?
Exactly right.
I'm just using those as an example.
Sure, and B of A is a great example, as Wells, but B of A was headquartered in California and started as Bank of Italy and changed its name to Bank of America and grew and got larger, and then there was a point in time in the 80s, or actually it was the 90s, where they were acquired by another bank in North Carolina called Nations Bank.
Is
I'm
this
getting
have
a lot
to do
of
with
detail,
the economy?
It's a combination of things. It certainly, one has to do with the amount of capital available to continue to grow banks and expand them, and how many institutions investors might want to invest in. Some of it has to do with the economy. Many times, as we've gone through these cycles about every 10 years, some banks are having difficult times and have a difficult time surviving, and as we know in this cycle we've been in over the last 4 or 5 years, about 500 banks have been closed across the country.
Why have the number of branches more than doubled?
And again, that's because of the acquisitions. So if you have 2 separate banks and all of a sudden one acquires the other, they usually kept the other one and it became a branch as opposed to a bank.
Let's put up the numbers for the California banks here. Those are the numbers from 1980 to the present. And a little bit of a different story here, right?
Yeah, it's a little misleading, I think, when you look at it. Again, going back to 1980 when deregulation started, 281 banks in California, and now it shows 247. What's different and unique is, and a little bit different than the national scene, is if you look at that 281 banks, there's only about 40 or 50 of those banks are still around. The rest were acquired by other banks, and so in local communities, like in our community, when banks were acquired, like in the case of Central Valley Community Bank, we started in 1980 after there had been some acquisitions in this market, and small banks were acquired by big banks, and generally people, especially small business, like to have a community bank where they can know the CEO, the bank knows the industries. And so what's happened is when banks were acquired, new banks popped up and started new banks. Not one for one, but there were new banks that started, and that's why the number doesn't look that much different.
Now, let me ask you, Central Valley Community Bank has been around, what, since 1980?
Correct.
Something like that.
That's
How many
right.
banks has your bank, for example, acquired or merged with over that course of time?
Right. We've acquired 2 other banks. We have 17 offices from Fresno, Clovis, up to and including Sacramento. So we acquired a bank up in the San Joaquin area that allowed us to enter Tracy and Stockton and Lodi. We acquired a bank in Madera County, which helped us open an office in Oakhurst and Madera. And what we found, and the reason for acquisitions is, a number of reasons, but one is our customers here in Fresno are growing and expanding and doing business up and down the valley.
Now, you've got $900 million in capital. What's specifically does that mean to our viewers?
It's actually $900 million in assets,
Okay.
Which is the way banks tend to measure themselves, and part of those assets, the biggest is loans. It's a little bit different than you and I individually. So a loan is an asset to us. It's a liability to you, John, but and you know that. So
that's okay.
But anyway,
okay.
and
but you
capital,
got 17 banks, right?
17 branches.
Branches,
correct, right. And so what that means is it allows us to take our brand of banking, hopefully, which is, we believe, to know our customers, and we're primarily focused on the small, medium businesses in the Central Valley, which includes agriculture.
Right. Now, you do some real estate loans,
We
obviously, but now you're rated, let me ask a very important question here. You're rated in the top 20 in the state of California as far as banks are concerned. Is that because your focus is not so much on housing?
I think it's just the growth of the markets. We were able to survive reasonably well through this downturn in the economy, and we've seen that a number of financial institutions have had some challenges. The regulators would tell us over the last couple of years that 60% of the banks in California did have challenges, what they would call troubled banks. The good news is that's improving. Now it's about 50%. But part of our belief of why we were able to survive was, one, that we really have great customers, and that our customers were able to survive, and a bank will only be as good as its market.
But having so many loans out, as far as housing is concerned, that's more of a risk than doing small business to medium businesses, medium-sized businesses, and ag, right? Housing is a risk.
Everything we do is a risk. We're in a risk business, so our job is to monitor that risk, to evaluate it, and to do prudent kinds of things that we know that will get a reasonable return, that will help our communities and help our individual customers grow and expand, and yet get our money back and continue to expand our business for our shareholders, and to make sure that our employees have jobs tomorrow. So it's all about risk, and you're right, real estate grew very, very rapidly, and we're certainly not any smarter than anyone else, but because we've been in the business for quite a while, and that's why I have this gray hair, is to reference it. I always say banking is, in many ways, it's an experience business. So we try to learn from the mistakes we've made in the past. So as we were growing our business during this last downturn in the economy, we got very concerned in some of the things that we were seeing going on in the real estate markets, particularly in housing. And so we backed off of that market, and we were more diversified. So we didn't have the same exposure where some banks didn't either see it, or they thought there was too easy to make a profit, and they continued on.
And I want to talk to you more about that. We got to take a time out here, a commercial break here on Connect with Me. Your phone calls, hey, the phone lines are open. Dan Doyle is here to answer your questions. 559-265-4331. Be back on the other side of this break.
Is taking care of laundry taking too much of your time? Have you become a missing mom? With a new fast, efficient washer and dryer from Ventura TV Video Appliance, you'll spend more of your day the way you want.
This Amana Super Capacity Washer Dryer Pair is now just $6.99, and this heavy-duty Maytag Super Capacity Washer Dryer Pair is only $8.99.
Don't spend your life on laundry. Upgrade today at Ventura TV Video Appliance and save.
And we're back with Dan Doyle. He's the president CEO of the Central Valley Community Bank. We want to put up on the screen now a disclaimer. We just have to do this every time we do focus on business. And we just want to say that Dan voluntarily came here today to offer his expertise in banking, the housing industry, and the economy. He's part of course, as I said, the Federal Reserve. Very well-respected man. Now, he didn't get paid. He didn't pay us. We didn't pay him. He came here voluntarily, and we're glad to have him. Hope he comes back here on the program. We're talking with Dan Doyle, and appreciate you being here. Why has your bank survived? Is it, like you said before the break, because you kind of backed off the housing? You guys were smart financially during the meltdown of 2008?
John, like so many things, I guess there are probably many reasons, and luck may have a big part of that. But, I think it's a couple of things, and I think I alluded to it before the break. One is we pride ourselves on the people we do business with, our customers and those we lend money to. And so I think that because generally speaking our customers survived and did reasonably well through this period, that certainly was a key part to our success.
But you also made smart decisions, right? Backing off the housing was a very important thing, because that's really what kind of caused this whole domino effect, would you say, in
Sure,
2008?
sure. And I think the fact that we diversified our portfolio, as we call it, the loans, that we weren't just making real estate loans. And during the early periods of the 05, 06, that's where money was being made, and a lot of people were concentrating more in the banking, concentrating more of their lending. We became concerned when we saw everybody go in the same direction. Many times that's a warning signal.
Right.
So we were trying to make sure that we were more diversified. We did an acquisition in a different market to diversify geographically. And again, we continued to expand our lending to agriculture, which we know for the Valley has been great the last few years. Well, so certainly I think the experience of our management team, I think the experience of our board of directors, that made a huge difference in some of the decisions.
As you know, in 2008, a lot of people took a lot of big hits in housing. Now, obviously, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, all these bigger banks, Citibank, of course, they can afford to take a larger hit than a bank like Central Valley Community Bank. Now, in the housing industry the last couple of years, how much did you lose in housing, roughly speaking? Not to the penny, but
Sure.
I mean, if you have a general figure, how much you guys lost?
Yeah, a lot of times it's how you measure that, because we have customers that we lent money to, and they in turn were providing services to the housing industry. But I would say in our case, in relative terms, it was relatively small compared to the industry. It was less than $1 million. And so for us, that didn't mean we didn't have losses other places, because the whole industries were affected, but we didn't suffer the significant losses in what people call other real estate owned, where we had to go in and foreclose property. We had very, very few of those situations, and I think we had only two residential loans that we had to be involved with foreclosure. Again, pretty fortunate.
Now, I don't know how many houses you guys took over in the last few years.
Yeah, just two.
Just two, that's it. And maybe a lot of people want to know, I'm curious to know, a bank doesn't really want to own a house.
That's correct.
It's a liability, is it not?
Yeah, that's not our business. Our business is to serve our communities, provide banking services, try to gather deposits and then lend those deposits out, get a spread, and do it over and over again, and help someone build their individual wealth, help a company grow. So the worst thing that can happen is when we end up with the collateral, a house in this case, back, because everybody knows if a bank owns it, that they're not good at managing it. They're going to have to sell it at a loss, and so that's the last thing we want, is to own the property. So we'll do everything we can to work with a borrower to try to make it fair and equitable, so that everybody comes out as best they can, the borrower, the community, as well as the bank.
Dan, what's the criteria now, especially for your bank? Somebody comes in, wants to buy a house, they want to get a loan, they want to buy a car, they want to get a loan. What's the criteria? Is it tightened up, or is your bank a little bit more liberal with loaning money now that things have settled down, or what's it like?
And I think our bank is very typical. When I look at what's happened in the industry, things were more flexible. Bankers had lots of money to lend in 05, 06, and so lending criteria did drop. Some of the rules and regulations, particularly in real estate, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, you've heard those terms, they were trying to encourage, because Congress was telling them, increase home ownership, so they were making it easier for banks to make loans, to pool them and sell them, because they would guarantee them. So as they loosened the underwriting, they being Fannie and Freddie, to do what Congress wanted them to do, the banks, not saying it's right or wrong, it probably isn't right, but they were following along, saying, well, sure, we can do that. So what happened was, and housing grew, lots of real estate loans were made, and then we hit kind of the crunch in 08, and things started to fall the opposite direction. So everybody starting to tighten up on their credit, and needed more.
But is it easier now to loan money?
The banking industry has a lot of money to lend. Unfortunately, like all things, particularly when you've got governmental regulations involved, the pendulum swings one way and it swings the other. So we see now that the requirements from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and institutions, they're a little tighter out there. It doesn't mean that you can't get a loan, and most of it's prudent. I mean, there were some crazy things going on before. It just takes longer now to get a loan, but there's lots of money out there.
To qualify for a loan, right? It takes longer to qualify.
quality, to qualify is really back to what the standards were in 05 and 04 and normal times before they got a little looser. So it just takes longer. The lenders now are gun shy because investors are gun shy. So they just want to make sure that you're working, that you got money in your savings account. So it just takes longer to go through the underwriting process. So what used to take 30 days now takes probably 60 to 90 days.
You better be making good money and have a steady job and have had for the last couple of years.
And pay your bills, right.
And pay your bills and have a good credit rating.
Right, exactly.
I mean, all those factors involved. All right, Dan Doyle, the president and CEO of the Central Valley Community Bank. Some good conversation here. Hey, we got to take a time out, talk about the Connect with Me daily deal, and then your phone calls. We still haven't had one yet today, kind of unusual. 559-265-4331 is the number.
Ventura TV Appliance Center. We're the go big, thin as in, flats where it's at place. The HD 3D web-enabled electronics and TV place. You following me?
LG's 50-inch flat panel TV is great for sports, and the 600 Hz subfield driving virtually eliminates motion blur. Get it now for just $5.99.
At the big screen surround sound, no more $12 popcorn place. Since 1951, Ventura TV Appliance Center. We're working hard to be your place.
Howdy, I'm John Malos, and I'm here to tell you all about me. Me TV, that is. When nothing else matters but boots and chaps and cowboy hats, Me TV is where you ought to be. From the cot rides on the Ponderosa to Marshall Dillon keeping peace in Dodge, Me TV is your station for Western hits like Bonanza and Gunsmoke, the Big Valley branded Rawhide, the Wild Wild West, and more. So dust off your boots and saddle up and visit MeTVFresno.com to learn how to get Me TV for free.
Is taking care of laundry taking too much of your time? Have you become a missing mom? With a new fast, efficient washer and dryer from Ventura TV Video Appliance, you'll spend more of your day the way you want. Save now on Frigidaire's Advanced Affinity Laundry Pair. Let Frigidaire save you energy, water, and time. Don't spend your life on laundry. Upgrade today at Ventura TV Video Appliance and save.
Good morning, folks. My name is Dennis, and I'm back on the showroom floor of Ventura TV to show you this great value we have today. This is a Frigidaire smooth top freestanding stove, and it is stainless. Let's look at the cooktop. Now we have 5 burners, one in the middle is a warmer. This is a 6-inch and a 9-inch burner combination, so you can make the difference in sizes. It's also high quality. This is a big 12-inch burner. 2,700 watts means a quick boil of the water. Let's look at the controls. Look at this, beautiful, easy to read. There's your light for your oven, self-cleaning button, easy to read. Also too, there's your bake, your broil, and here's a little button for up and down for the adjustment of the heat. Has a light for the oven, the preheat for the oven, and also it does have the light that locks up for your self-cleaning mode, which this model does have. Now also too, look at the elegance of this door. Look at the handle. It's not like the bulky handles that most everybody carries in their stoves today. True stainless. Also too, in the oven, as you can look down here, there is no element. That means it's a hidden bake element. That will save you from time and money of replacing an element that's just out there collecting all the soil. But let's talk about price. Normally we have it for $849 here. We have it on sale for $649, and for Connect With Me viewers, it is only $549. The only buddy in town has it is Best Buy. They're at $719. Thank you. This is our daily deal.
All right, Dennis Patton, good job. We're back with Dan Doyle, the president and CEO of the Central Valley Community Bank, and your phone calls, they're open. The lines are 265-4331.
Ventura TV Appliance Center. We're the save energy, save time, save money place. The Energy Star qualified, ready, steam equipped, high efficiency Frigidaire affinity place. You heard right. Right now, save big on select Frigidaire laundry pairs and pay no interest when paid in full within 6 months. At the hometown low price, think outside the big box place. Since 1951, Ventura TV Appliance Center. We're working hard to be your place.
From now on, when I sneeze, I'll try to sneeze more friendly.
And we're back with Dan Doyle, the President and CEO of the Central Valley Community Bank. And what's the state of the economy right now? I know you sit on the Federal Reserve. There's an advisory panel, and you sit on that Federal Reserve board, and you probably have a good sense for what's going on. You got a good pulse for what's happening. What's the state of our economy just a couple of months away from the election?
Sure. High level, I would say, if you follow the numbers, that I believe we're out of the deep crisis that we are in. Now, there's still a lot of issues and a lot of potential for, challenges if something significant happened in Europe, or heaven forbid some kind of national attack on our country. So there's always the potential that things can happen. But I think generally speaking, we're out of the difficult part of where we've been for the last 3-4 years. I think the challenge is it's going to be a very slow recovery. It appears as though the unemployment rate is not going to come down quickly like it has in previous recessions. We've got a national debt to deal with. So it's better, going to get better, but it's going to take a while.
Let's take a quick call. Good morning, you're on Connect with me. Let's see. Whoop. They didn't want to wait. They didn't want to be patient, but that's okay. So,
hope I didn't scare them off.
No, well, maybe I did. I don't know. Are we on the verge or close to becoming like Europe or Greece at all? Could we reach that level of going down economically?
Well, obviously, in fact, my wife and I were in Europe just recently, and it's always interesting to view it firsthand and talk to people and get a sense for what's going on. It all depends on what you mean by that, I guess. There are some people in our country that might think that's a good thing. If you look at the current economic state, particularly those on the euro, with Greece probably being the worst, and we've heard the term pigs, Portugal, Ireland,
yeah.
Greece, obviously, and Spain are the most challenged. We were happened to be in France, and it's got its challenge. The UK is probably doing the best. And Germany, of course. So
could we reach that level?
Well, and again, depending on what the factors are. I mean, we obviously have a large deficit we have to deal with. So I think it's like anything else. I think our problems are manageable, but I think it's important to have the leadership in Congress and at the executive level, the president. And I think we have to have a plan, and I think that's what's missing, and I think it's what concerns the business people I talk with, is the uncertainty of how do we pay back that deficit. And I think it's okay to have a deficit when you're trying to stimulate the economy, but the question is, how do we now get out of it? And unfortunately, in Europe, they haven't figured that out either, and that's why they continue to have huge challenges.
I want to put up on the screen here some TARP numbers.
Sure.
Troubled Asset Relief, that's the number of banks bailed out, of course, by the federal government, $244 billion, $40 billion from B of A and Citibank, and they've paid back about 93% of that. Now, let me ask you, Dan, is it good that, they did this by being able to print money? Is it a good idea to print money, a lot of money?
I gotta go back first, because one of the things that always drives me crazy is when people talk about the TARP program and they call it a bailout. First of all, there are 700 banks. Remember, we looked at out of about 75,000 or 7,500. There are about 700 banks that were allowed and actually encouraged, in some cases told, to take this money to help recapitalize the banking system in October of 2008 for about a 3-month or about a 90-day period, where there was concerns because the banking system, the whole economic system froze up. So try to restore confidence, and that's what that was as related to the banking piece. Now, the banks only took $245 billion out of the $500 billion.
Right. All right. We're almost out of time here, but that's okay. That's okay. I hope you come back.
Oh, thank you.
And you were a great guest.
Well, thank you, John.
I appreciate your insight, your expertise on the banking industry and the economy. Dan Doyle, the President and CEO of the Central Valley Community Bank. And we appreciate his time. We'll be back tomorrow with more of Connect with Me. See you then.
Tonight I want to discuss the importance of the television medium to the American people.
me?
Me?
Go to metvfresno.com for schedules, information on your favorite shows, videos, pictures, and more. Go to metvfresno.com today. Exclusively brought to you by Ventura TV.